It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining, flowers are in bloom, and Savor Idaho, Idaho's premier wine event, returns to the Idaho Botanical Garden in Boise on Sunday, June 8th. There you can sample the best of Idaho wines and ciders, stroll the beautiful gardens, grab a bite from local food trucks, enjoy live music, and much more. So slip on the shades, pull up a glass, and enjoy award-winning Idaho wines and ciders at Savor Idaho. Purchase your tickets today at idahowines.org. You must be 21 or over to attend. Today on CityCast Boise, Valley Regional Transit is a bit of a unicorn as one of the only public transit systems with zero state support. We're diving into how it survives with limited funding, how route changes have impacted riders, and if cities are stepping up to keep buses rolling. It's Tuesday, May 27th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Today, I'm chatting with Valley Regional Transit CEO Elaine Clegg. Thanks so much for being here today, Elaine.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Let's start with the basics. How does Valley Regional Transit get its funding? And what's unique about your funding compared to how other public transit agencies are funded?
That's a great question. We are a political subdivision of the state, which means we were formed with a vote of the people in 1998. Both Ada and Canyon County. We then joined into one organization. That statute allows us to take voluntary contributions from our members. It does not include any kind of levy authority. We also don't get any state funding, which is unique in the United States. So we also receive a fair amount of funding from the federal government. And so about 55% of our funding comes from that federal grant process. So that means that there's an annual budget process with all of our members. And so in this period of time, we tell them how much we need to continue operating what we have today and ask them to voluntarily contribute that much money to our organization so that we can run that service.
Elaine, I want to make sure that we don't gloss over this. Did you say that Idaho is the only state in the country, as far as you are aware, who is not providing direct annual funding for transit?
Yes, I did say that. We are the only state.
Why do you think that is?
Historically, transit wasn't a big deal in Idaho. We were a very rural state until, say, 30 or 40 years ago. We began to urbanize. City of Boise at that point was the only really what you would call urban area in the state, and it funded its own bus service. There was this belief, I think, that transit was a big city thing and Idaho didn't have big cities and we didn't really need it. And why was it the state's obligation to do this? And people like to drive here, and the money that we have to pay for transportation comes from drivers through a gas tax. Well, in the last 40 years, a lot of things have changed. One is that there's a recognition that even though the gas tax federally and at the state level paid for state highways, it never paid for local roads. Local roads were always paid for with property tax, which is a general tax on everyone. And so it's hard to say that users pay for that drivers pay for that. Everyone pays for it. At the same time, we began to urbanize. We now have 10 cities over 50,000, and those cities really are beginning to need some transportation choices that weren't originally available to us, and that includes transit. The other thing that happened is that 15 years ago, there was a concerted effort to authorize the use of local option sales tax, in part which could be used for transit. And that effort failed. It came very close, but at the end of the day, it wasn't authorized. So for 15 years, at the legislature anyway, no one has said to them, hey, wait a minute, what about transit? What are you going to do for us? So one of the things I did when I got hired was begin that conversation anew. And 2 years in, we at least have people's attention. I'm getting ready to go on a tour around the state where I will meet with legislators in every part of the state to talk about it. And our goal is to get authorizing legislation at some point for at least a dedicated local source. And so beginning again to build the understanding that there is a state role in this. It isn't as straightforward as saying, oh, everyone here loves to drive and we pay for it ourselves.
So it sounds like as we've grown, as, we've had explosive growth, especially in the past 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
it sounds like the needs of our population have changed pretty drastically too. And you still are having to go every year, city to city, asking for funds. What do these cities want to see to continue funding VRT?
Well, of course, they always want to see more riders, and certainly understandable. The problem is the level of service we have today. It's really hard to build ridership. And thus, the reason that we did the big service change last year was to say, if we take the money that we're spending today and use it the most productively we can to produce as many riders as possible, what changes would we make? And lo and behold, it seems to be working. Now, is it as many riders as people would love to see? Probably not, but it's really emphasizing the factors that lead to more ridership, and that is convenient, frequent, extended service. We don't have that in very many places. The city of Boise, thankfully, funds us at a much higher level than almost anywhere else. And now within the city of Boise, we're able to provide really frequent service every 15 minutes on an extended hour basis on 3 routes. And people love that.
Well, and I definitely want to get into that because previously, you've sat on the Boise City Council, and now you're on the VRT side of things. How much of VRT's funding comes from the city of Boise?
A lot. Of our total budget, nearly a third comes from the city of Boise.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it really sounds like Boise is, at least on the city side of things, really shouldering the cost for a lot of the valley.
Well, except that they're not shouldering costs for other places. They're shouldering costs for service in Boise. So the way we have set this up is that we assess you a cost based on your proportion of population for the regional overhead, but otherwise based on the amount of service that your city gets and what it costs to provide that service, both on the operating and repair and maintenance capital side. And so, yes, the city of Boise contributes a lot. In return for that, of the 19 fixed routes that we have in the system, 15 of them are wholly or almost wholly within Boise.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it is a proportionate, like the amount of access is proportionate to the funding for each city.
Exactly.
Hey Boise, it's Lindsay. Let's keep it real. If you've got something great to offer, like a business or an event, you should be advertising with us. People in Boise trust us to tell them what's good, and that could be you. Our listeners care about what's happening, and they love a good local recommendation. So if you want to make sure the best audience in town knows about you, then advertise on CityCast Boise. Learn more by emailing us at ads@citycast.fm. That's ads@citycast.fm.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Let's shift our focus from Boise to Nampa, because it seemed like conversations about VRT in Nampa this year seemed, I'm not sure which word I want to use, maybe tense. According to Boise Dev, Mayor Debbie Kling said, quote, "Our city's budgets are tight and we're trying to figure out how to fund VRT. Not everyone is of the same opinion that it's a wise use of funds," end quote. How are you making the case for VRT funding in a city where even the mayor has publicly questioned its value?
Yeah, and I guess I would rephrase that to say what the mayor has done is voice the conditions on the ground in Nampa. The budget is tight. They have some city council members that are really questioning whether or not spending funds on VRT is the right decision budget-wise for them. And I appreciate that because that level of honesty has allowed us to really dig in and let them understand what impact it would have on their city if there were changes. And so the first scenario was keep things the way they are. What's happening today? Is it working? Is it not working? And we were able to show them that with the changes that we made last year, we are growing ridership. We were able to show that ridership is up 27% overall in Nampa as a result of those changes, and access to ridership is up 22%. So long way to say, then the scenarios we created, one was to get rid of fixed route in Nampa, one was to get rid of on-demand in Nampa, and what impact would that have? So what we were able to show them is that a lot of people would lose access. They would lose a lot of riders, thousands of riders a year. Most importantly, we've been able to do some economic impact analysis that showed that the loss of on-demand would cost them $1.4 million in their local economy, and the loss of fixed route would cost them $1.7 million. Together, if you lose both of those, it's over $3 million in the local economy that just disappears. So we showed them that, and then we showed them an expansion possibility, which is based on our long-range plan, and putting that frequent extended service like we have in Boise into Nampa and Caldwell. We'd have a multi-million-dollar impact on the economy in a positive way, $44 million more, and we'd reach almost nearly 1 million riders in Canyon County with those kinds of services. And so showing that possibility, I think really piqued the interest of a couple of council members.
Absolutely.
So then we did a survey and we did a focus group and we said, of these options, what do you think? 87% of the people wanted more service. They didn't want less. If there's a choice, expand, do the expansion model. 43% said at least keep things the same. Very, very few people said cut service. And even council members who previously have been very skeptical of our services reacted to that very well. The response was, it really does look like if we're going to do transit service, we should do it better, not do it worse.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for a light and fit remix. Like a crunchy storm of graham cookies, caramel pearls, and dark chocolate, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 light and fit remix varieties with craveable flavors and up to 120 calories and 10 grams of protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See remixyogurt.com.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
I want to pivot now to last year's route changes, because initially they did prompt some concern from longtime riders, especially some of the people who rely on VRT the most. What have you heard from those communities since the change?
While we still have some riders, a small number, who have less access to service than they used to, and they rue that. And we still have some people who were used to their old patterns and have had trouble responding to the new patterns. Overall, we already have an increase in ridership. It's focused, frankly, on those inter-county routes. When you make a big service change like we made, it takes typically 2 to 3 years for ridership to even recover, let alone start growing. We're at a little bit of growth already a year in, and on some routes we're at a lot of growth. We have a couple that have not been taken up as easily or as quickly as we hoped. We think that we know in a couple of reasons it's because service is worse.
Are there any routes that aren't as popular with riders since you made changes last June?
So the Route 10, which covers most of Hill Road and delivers to Boise High School and also then home at night, is now, instead of being hourly all day, only runs peak hour, and it stops very, very early in the day. And so we're looking at adding at least one more route to it in the evening to help with that. We have another route that used to go downtown, and it's the Orchard route. People always knew it as a route that sort of wandered around the bench and then ended up downtown. It's now a route that starts at Hillside Junior High, goes up 36th, up Veterans Parkway, and then over to Orchard and all the way to the airport. And it connects to every single one of our more frequent routes and also every of our other routes that go downtown. But the people who used to ride it want to go directly downtown. They're not used to making transfers, and so they really haven't discovered it yet. And the people north of Fairview that didn't used to have service haven't discovered that it exists yet. I would say one more area that we know we need to improve service is in the West Bench. So we used to have a route that moved north-south through the West Bench, and now we have one that moves east-west. The Route 21 got rerouted. It still moves north-south, but only on the edge. So despite the changes and the complaints, overall ridership is up. Overall, we're filling in those holes with other things, and we're asking people to be patient and discover those and learn how to use them. And for the most part, they are, even though we still get and value rider comments, because with those, then we can make those improvements I talked about.
Well, and it sounds like with these changes, you've been very innovative and receptive to community feedback when trying to make sure that these routes that have changed still work for the community.
We surely are. One thing I'm trying to instill here is innovation as a way of doing business. I think, government often gets tagged with not being very innovative. My experience in both the city of Boise and here at VRT is that government, especially government that's not very well funded, has to be innovative in order to get their services out there in the way that they desire to meet their goals. And so for us, innovation is just the way we have to do things.
Elaine, while I have you here, everybody's talking about money. The cost of everything seems to be increasing almost exponentially at this point. I want to ask you about fares. The price for a single ride right now is $2.25, and a 1-year unlimited pass is just under $600. Do you expect that prices for fares will stay stable, or do you think they could potentially increase over the next year or two?
We are going to look at our fare structure, and we may change it a little bit. I don't foresee a big increase. And then, as you mentioned, we have the yearly passes, and we also have monthly passes that are about $42, which is a pretty good deal. So you talk about the increase of costs of everything, and should fares increase, possibly there's room for that. But more importantly, I think using this kind of transportation as a backstop against those price increases. The bus that I ride on when I ride has a young man who he and his wife decided to only own one car because he could ride the bus. In only owning one car, they've been able to save to potentially buy a house. They haven't bought it yet, but they're saving for it. They wouldn't be able to do that if he wasn't riding the bus, because it costs almost $15,000 a year now to own and operate a car in Canyon County, a little bit less in Ada County. So we'd like to keep the costs as they are and not increase them, because we think they're a really good way to help those families that are struggling with costs overall, keep those costs down.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, even when you look at it for an unlimited pass for a year, that's less than I'm paying for car insurance for 6 months or something. So yeah, no, it is so much more cost effective to have access to transit. Okay, Elaine, before I let you go, I have one more question. What is something that you feel people consistently misunderstand about VRT, or maybe a myth surrounding public transit in this region?
I think probably the biggest one is that people choose to drive as much as they drive here because they love to drive. And then I ask those same people who say that, well, gosh, when you go to Europe or go to any of the really big cities in the United States, do you rent a car and drive? Oh, no, I often, ride the train or ride the transit. Or, well, why do you choose to do that there but not here? Well, because it's really good there. It's not very good here. So to me, this idea that Idahoans won't ride transit because they just love the freedom of having their own car, certainly there's some truth in that. I have owned a car since I was 16 years old. I love it for the things that make sense, going up in the mountains, going places where there is no transit. And I learned to ride transit when I lived in Denver and my mother didn't drive. And transit was my freedom, my independence. How many suburban moms and dads, how many suburban young teenagers that are too young to drive, too old to, be stuck at home all the time, would love to be able to send those teens on a transit trip instead of having to be chaperoned everywhere they go. It's independence for everyone. People drive because it's the easiest, fastest, most convenient way to get there. If transit provided that same ease, that same convenience, then people will ride transit. There's not some cultural thing in Idaho that says people won't ride transit, because when they go other places, they ride.
Elaine, it's like you have heard the conversations my husband and I have been having recently, because we've got two teenagers, and the amount of activities and get-togethers that we're having to drive all of our kids to, it's eating into a huge chunk of our weekend, of our evenings. And yeah, if I could just, send them on a bus, send them on a route to where they needed to go, 100%, that would be what I would like to do. So I really hope sometime in the future we can make that a reality.
I do too.
Elaine, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to come on the show and break this down and explain what's happening with public transit in the Valley. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And it's an issue that people haven't dug into for a long time. So I think there maybe is a bit of explaining to do. So hopefully this is helpful.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review. It helps other people find us. We'll be back tomorrow morning to discuss if Secret Lives of Mormon Wives really represents what it's like to be a modern Mormon. You won't want to miss it.